करने में, एक engine का एक camshaft develop करने में, a company like PCL, which has 30 years of experience, still takes 2 to 2.5 years. And that 2 to 2.5 years is intense amount of effort from both PCL side and from the OEM side to make the castings, to machine them, to put them into engine testing, to put them into vehicle testing. उसको durability test कहते हैं. उस camshaft को इतना अब्यूज करेगा वो इंजन कि गंदा ऑयल डालो, हाई टेम्परेचर, लो टेम्परेचर, हर चीज किया उसको, और देखते हैं कि ये ढंग.
Hi everyone. Today we are joined by Mr. Karan Shah, the Executive Director of Emos and a very integral part of Precision Camshafts Limited. Today we discuss about electric vehicles, the transition towards EV from ICE vehicles, and we understand his entire journey, his business journey from the factory floor as an intern to the managerial role that he's in today. So welcome, Mr. Karan Shah. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sriram, for having me.
Anuj is our Chief Investment Officer. He takes care of research, and he's joined us on the call.
Anuj.
Hi, Karan.
So, Karan, we've gone through when we study a company, first, the most important thing that we do is we understand the promoter. Okay. And we've gone through your profile maybe 3 years ago. And it was a very fascinating profile, in fact. So you have done Harvard, you worked in Jamaica, you've studied in China. I'm not giving you the entire timeline. It's all around the place. Even your life and your journey has been all around the world. So how has your journey been like since school? Like, because you have assumed investment banking position, you've been an engineer with Cummins, you've done Harvard MBA, you've been in Purdue, now you're in PCL. So how has the journey been for you?
Sure. So yeah, I think it's been a super exciting journey, an adventurous one at that. So I think I'd like to rewind back a little bit, right, before getting into my journey. And I had the great fortune, I would say, and very fortunate that I was part of my father's journey, actually, as he started Precision Camshafts Limited exactly 30 years ago from today. It was 1993, and I was probably 3 years old at the time. And my father started this business from a 1,000 square foot shed with 5 people, including him, with some second-hand machines that he bought, to semi-machine camshafts. Yeah, and he had a vision at the time, and his vision was very clear that if we are in a business, then we should become India's largest, and then soon enough, one of the world's largest at that. So since the age of 3 up until now, I've been fortunate to witness this journey and see the building blocks being put together. Yeah, so this, even if it has been secondhand for except for the last 6 or 7 years, I've been able to see what it has taken for him to kind of build this up business from scratch. At I've been born and brought up in Solapur in Maharashtra. This is where I did most of my schooling up until 12th standard. And then the idea was to get engineering education, not because of wanting to come back to PCL or having to work in this business or anything like this, but it was simply because I was a very inquisitive child, I think. Always wanted to know how things work, always wanted to see, what makes the world move in the way it is. And so I wanted to study engineering to kind of take that further. And having looked at a lot of options in India and overseas, we as a family, we decided that, at the age of 18, they kind of let me spread my wings and say, okay, we go to the US to study engineering, and applied to a bunch of colleges, gotten through most of them, and said, we actually went and visited a few campuses in the US before actually starting term. And the campus at Purdue University really fascinated me, right? It's one of the top engineering colleges in the world, and of course in the US. Some of the most prominent astronauts have come out of Purdue University. Some of the best engineering marbles have come out of alumni of the university, etc. And having visited the campus, which is a really small town in the middle of nowhere, really speaking, it fascinated me, to what that institute can add. to my journey, right? So I spent 4 years there. Of course, was extremely challenging, I must say. I think the difference between what I've seen in the education system here in India versus what I've experienced at Purdue is that everything that we did was application oriented, right? There was hardly any like hardcore theory. Of course, there is in engineering, but everything had an application to it. We had a lot of practical work that we did in labs. We understood how there was a full course on just how engines worked. We had to disassemble and assemble an entire engine. We did civil engineering courses on actual bridges that were built in that city. So a lot of real world application we understood there. And during that time, I could do a lot of, let's say, get a lot of experiences beyond just the engineering, right? So I was a part of a lot of clubs in college. I was able to participate in this international scholar laureate program, which you mentioned earlier, which was in China. We had the opportunity. A group of about 30 or 40 students from all over the world. Yeah, it was South Africa, Australia, UK, the US, everywhere, to go to China back in 2009 and 10 and to see what's happening in that country. And it was absolutely unbelievable, the kind of infrastructure that was being developed. We went and saw the world's largest dam. We saw some of the car factories. It was incredible. That, and then I also did a few other internships in automotive companies in the US, one called TI Automotive, and just get real world experience. Yeah, so that was Purdue. Made a lot of good friends there, and the way the curriculum is taught. It's funny that I still remember a lot of what I learned during the engineering school because they keep hammering it in you every 15 days. So it's not like you study for 1 year, give an exam, and forget about it. It's constant. So I still somehow have those technical know-how even 10 years later, right? So I think that was amazing. So after Purdue, I got into I through campus placement. I got a job at Cummins, which is one of the world's largest engine manufacturers, and I was in their headquarters in the US. So I had the opportunity to actually work on a machining line which machined engine blocks. And I was one of the youngest engineers on that line. And I think it was, I don't know whether, in hindsight, I would say it was good fortune, but at the time it was really stressful and very challenging because we were a team of about 6 or 7 people. And within my first 6 months, most of them had got transferred out or had left their jobs. So you can imagine at the age of, I think, 21 or 22, I was the senior most engineer on that machining line. What that did do is it gave me tremendous amount of responsibility of the actual job. But my boss was also very nice to me at the time and gave me these responsibilities and said, you are take take the decisions, even if they go wrong somewhere. At least you own that decision, right? And he gave me several projects. In that 2.5 years, I have implemented several projects at the company, spent hundreds and thousands of US dollars on capital projects, got them implemented, improved things there, and then kind of said that this is good technical knowledge, some managerial skills also developed there, and I always wanted to complement my engineering education with a management degree and an MBA, right? And when we looked at colleges at the time, the idea was to only apply to the top 3 or 4, and hota hai to hota hai, nahi to dekhenge type of thing. And my father and mother were actually very instrumental in that process because writing those essays is extremely daunting task. Preparing for those interviews, for B school interviews, is extremely daunting. But I remember times when they were, when my dad was awake at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. here India time to kind of help me prep for that. And yeah, so I did apply to a bunch of business schools, and Harvard Business School was the one that I got admitted to and chose to go there for my MBA program. And I was probably the youngest person in my class at the time because I was 24 years old, and the average age is about 28. Because 3 4 years 5 6 years of experience, but it was an incredible experience, right? I think it's the world's best business school, and arguably. But I think the things that I learned there is, yes, a lot from the casework that we did, and by the way, over 2 years, we studied 600 cases. So we studied how 600 companies worked in one way or the other, whether it was from a marketing point of view, an operations point of view, a sales point of view, and finance point of view, whatever. We studied 600 cases during those 2 years, which was incredible. But I think what was more um, enjoyable was the company that I had there and the network of people that were sitting around me during those 2 years. So, right, you can imagine that you have the smartest kids in the world sitting in a classroom of 90 and discussing business day in and day out for 2 years. And at that point of time, you open up your blinders. That's what I would honestly say, because for the 6 years before that, I was in engineering, looking at automotive and internships, then working at Cummins. You're kind of in a bubble, right? And this was like real popping of that bubble and looking outwards, because in the class of 9 you have doctors, you have lawyers, you have bankers, you have uh, all kinds of people sitting in one classroom and discussing one subject every day. And so you can imagine the kind of perspective that brings into that conversation, and how you don't probably think about it, but somebody else does. So it just opens up your mind. It gives you the opportunity to see how other industries work besides your own. It gives you access to the best professors in the world, for advice, for learning, for so many things. And was also an opportunity to travel a lot. Business schools in the US are known for this, where students are traveling a lot, either for projects or for fun or whatever. Gives you the opportunity to see the world. One of those projects which was really interesting to me was, if you've heard of Richard Branson and the Virgin Group, they have a center for entrepreneurship in Jamaica, and they encourage. It's like a incubator for businesses that they set up in the Caribbean islands. And me and a friend of mine had the opportunity to actually participate in that entrepreneurship center, and go to Jamaica, witness how 4 startups work day to day, and spend a lot of time with them. And we wrote cases on them, which we brought back to HBS and kind of presented to the professor. So that was an incredible experience that we had. We had one of the projects while at Harvard was go to Istanbul in Turkey and physically study in detail how one of their biggest department stores works, and come back with suggestions of how to improve it. So it's just a wide variety of things that we got to do. And one of the best things about the HBS MBA itself is that it does not call for specialization in the second year. So while most business schools will say, ki, were you an MBA in finance? Were you an MBA in marketing? Were you an MBA in what? So this is the only program which says, no, you're just a master in business administration, right? So in the second year, you get to choose a wide variety of subjects. So if you really want to focus on finance, you can take all 10 electives in finance. But because I wanted to have a generalist approach, I kind of said, let's do a little bit of everything. So that was a good experience. And then after that, I did about 3 or 4 months of a short investment banking stint in Europe and Germany, working on M&A. And then eventually decided, in 2016, after all of this experience, 10 plus years, to come back to India and be part of the growth story at PCL. So that the company was at a specific inflection point, let me put it like that. And I said, let's be part of this journey rather than sit on the fence and look at it. So, so that's the journey in short.
Karan, that's a very extensive journey, and
Yeah.
you're still very young, and yet you've been through you've seen different businesses, different environments, and especially when you're in a place like Harvard, like you said, you're getting opinions of bankers, of doctors, of a Navy personnel on the same business issue, and that really forms the mindset. That really changes your mindset too.
Exactly.
18-year-old, because look, most of our investors, we're seeing the average age is somewhere around 26 to 31 years of age. Okay, to them, and they're just getting started. They're just starting to invest. They've graduated, they've got their first job, and now they're progressing. They're earning good salary. Now they're starting to invest. To them, how would you explain your business in very simple terms? Like, if I ask how ChatGPT to explain the business, how would you, like, in very simple terms, how would you explain your business to investors?
Yeah. So I think in a summary, our business is split across 2 verticals. Let's put it like this. One is component manufacturing and one is electric powertrains. Within the component manufacturing, we are a world leader in camshaft
One second.
manufacturing, which is the heart of
Sorry
the
to sorry to
engine. Yeah.
interrupt. Powertrain means what is powertrain?
I will I, I will explain the whole thing. So let me restart. So maybe you can get it from here. So our business is split into two verticals. One is component manufacturing and one is electric powertrains. When it comes to component manufacturing, we are one of the world leaders in camshafts, which is the mechanical heart of the engine, which is, we are supplying to customer OEMs all around the world. We are also doing a wide variety of other components for OEMs, which include injector components, instrumentation components, balancing shafts, gears, chassis components, etc., through our two other subsidiaries which are in the component space. We continue to grow these businesses and also diversify into engine agnostic or powertrain agnostic components. On the electric powertrain side, when I say powertrain, it basically comprises of all of the different aggregates, all of the different components that are required to power an electric vehicle, whether it's a small truck, a big truck, a bus, a road sweeper, etc. The entire powertrain, which includes battery packs, motors, software, electronics, etc. We are a system integrator of that. We integrate these powertrains onto vehicles. So that's our business. We are currently well entrenched in Europe, growing that business, and have an exciting story here in India as well as we start on retrofitment of LCVs. So that's a summary.
And
Absolutely.
I want to come back into something you said earlier. You said you don't want to just be a small factory, but world's factory, India's factory. So coming to that now, have you been successful, and what, like, in the success meaning, what is your market share in India for the item that you produce, the camshaft? What is your market
Yeah.
share in India and globally?
Yeah. So again, just a little bit of background before I get there, right? So my father started last 20, 30 years. He's had several important milestones in this journey, right? So when I was not part of the business, but there was a very big milestone was setting up a joint venture with a British company back in 2000 and setting up a manufacturing plant in India to supply to Europe, but with a 51% partner being a British company. That was a big step at that time, and it actually grew the company almost 10x, I would say, at that time. In 2006, PCL bought out that 51% from the British company, and then really the growth story of PCL has started from 2007 onwards. Fast forwarding to today, I think we are one of the largest camshaft manufacturers in India and, of course, in the world. At this point of time, we have the capacity to cast about 1 million camshafts per month and machine about 300,000 camshafts out of those 1 million cast camshafts. If you put it in numbers, we have about a 65-70% market share in India because we are supplying to all the OEMs in India, whether it is Tata Motors, Mahindra, Maruti Suzuki, Hyundai, all of the tractor manufacturers, etc. But what we very, very consciously do in India and globally is that we focus our attention and efforts on passenger cars only. We do not do two-wheeler, three-wheeler, commercial vehicles, generators, etc. They all require camshafts, but we are extremely focused on passenger cars because uh, that's the engine that requires the most precision, and it's a huge enough market that we don't need to do 10 other things. So besides this, India, we are our largest customers outside of India are the likes of Ford and GM and BMW and Mercedes and all the large and Toyota, all the large OEMs around the world. And we say that we have about a 8 to 10% global market share when it comes to passenger car camshafts. So we are very proud to say that 1 in every 10 cars in the world would probably have our camshaft in it. Um, this has been a growing business. It continues to grow. We continue to invest in camshafts as much as we have our one foot in the e-mobility business, and as much as we talk about e-mobility today, the demand and the requirement for internal combustion engines and cars driven on petrol continues to grow. The world manufactures about 80 million cars a year, and over 90% of those are still driven by gasoline or diesel, right? And we continue to be a big part of that. As a matter of fact, a lot of new contracts have been won by PCL just in the last few years, which will go into production in 2024, in 2025, which tells you, right, that this demand continues. It's not like a smartphone switch that you go from a Nokia to a Apple one day, and it's not like a technology shift that happens like that. It will be more evolutionary. It will take time. And what we're saying is that being one of the largest, we would like to keep our feet deeply entrenched in the camshaft business as we continue to grow the group. So that's on the camshaft side. Coming to the other expansions of the business, I've been part of the M&A activity of the group since I've come back to India, and we've acquired three companies in the last 5 years. There's a company, Memco in Nasik, where we're doing fuel injector parts. But one of the big things that we have done now is we've actually diversified that business quite a lot by doing instrumentation components for completely non-automotive requirements. So that business is growing well. We have a company called MFD in Germany where we are doing automotive components for the likes of VW, Audi, Skoda, etc. And we're growing that business as well. There also, we are looking at non-automotive business to kind of diversify the product portfolio. And also kind of looking at non-engine components in that space within the European market. And then, of course, we have Emos as part of our group, which kind of is our spearheading our e-mobility initiative. And our whole idea while looking at Emos as an acquisition was that we never wanted to be in the component manufacturing space in e-mobility. So to give you a simple example, you have about 2,000 moving parts in a combustion engine driven car, whereas it's probably not even 1% of that in an electric vehicle, right? You have a motor, and that's the only rotating part. Other than that, it's battery packs and electronics and harnesses and things like that, right? So it's very different. The system architecture is very different than a traditional IC car. So if you look at the main materials that go into it, it's battery packs, it's motors, and electronics. And there are companies that are far, far bigger than us in scale who do this at scale already. And it's much more efficient at this point of time, at least, to say putting it together has more value than actually manufacturing it, at least for a company of our size. So when we looked at Emos, we said, this is a company that has been around for 10 years plus, been around since 2008 through various different managements, etc. But from 2008, and been a real pioneer in the electrification of commercial vehicles. So the first time we went to Emos, me and my father, and we said, we sat in a 30-ton truck and drove around, absolutely silent. And it intrigued us how such a big vehicle was electrified, and it actually works, and it performs as per requirement, right? And we said that this company has all of the ingredients in there to make it big, but it's not driven in the right direction. Let's put it like that. So it's a gold mine, but not dug well enough or properly. So we said that given PCL's bandwidth, whether it's financial, whether it's supply chain, whether it's management, whether it's all of these things, we can actually grow this business significantly. And we did, right? So we bought this company in 2018, only 51% of it. And then we bought the balance 49% in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. But despite that, we grew that business from about 4 million euros of sale to about 22 million euros of sale in just a period of 5 years, despite the pandemic, despite the challenges in Europe, despite the war situation, etc. Right? So many variables were there, but we have still managed to grow because we have tried to say that we need to partner with the right customers to grow the business. We cannot do one off here and there conversions of trucks or buses into electric, but we need to partner with OEMs, partner with good customers to kind of standardize the business and to achieve volumes. So that's been the journey for Emos, and it has been quite a journey. It has been a roller coaster, no doubt about it, for the last 5 years. But I think we're in a steady growth path right now, and we see an exciting future for that business actually.
Right, Karan. Karan, हमारे जो उनका एक कंसर्न जो है वो ये है कि मार्केट जो है वो फ्यूचरिस्टिक वैल्यूएशन देता है किसी भी प्रोडक्ट को। फॉर एग्जांपल, हाइड्रोजन अभी तक ऑन ग्राउंड नहीं है, लेकिन जिन कंपनियों का कोई भी हाइड्रोजन टेक्नोलॉजी से कोई भी रिलेशन है, दे आर गेटिंग अ वैल्यूएशन विच इज टोटली मतलब टोटली एकदम एब्रप्ट वैल्यूएशन है, वेरी हाई वैल्यूएशन है। तो मतलब मार्केट जो है वो फ्यूचरिस्टिक वैल्यूएशन दे रहा है। जितनी भी कंपनी जो आईसी टेक्नोलॉजी पे बेस्ड है, उन कंपनियों को वो वैल्यूएशन नहीं मिल रहा। जो कंपनियां इलेक्ट्रिक या हाइड्रोजन से रिलेटेड है, इवन दो दे आर इन लॉसेज। सो करण, आई मीन आई अंडरस्टैंड कि आईसीई ओवरनाइट स्विच नहीं होगा ईवी में, लेकिन मार्केट का ये परसेप्शन है कि ईवी इज द फ्यूचर। एंड
अगर आप आज नंबर्स देखोगे तो इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स आर इन अ सिंगल डिजिट in almost every part of the world, barring a few countries, right? China is a different beast by itself, a different country by itself, and Northern Europe is very different. But by and large, अगर हम developing countries की बात करें, India, Russia, Korea, Japan, Brazil, Mexico, even the United States, बहुत सिंगल डिजिट में भी नहीं है इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स, और बहुत एक बड़ा जर्नी है ये कन्वर्जन होने के लिए। इसमें काफी चैलेंजेस आएंगे। फॉर एग्जांपल, एट द एंड ऑफ द डे, जैसे गैसोलीन और डीजल एक लिमिटेड फाइनाइट रिसोर्स है, लिथियम भी, कोबाल्ट भी, सारे जो रिसोर्सेस हम बैटरीज में आज यूज कर रहे हैं वो भी फाइनाइट ही है, अनलिमिटेड रिसोर्सेस नहीं है। आज इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर कंट्रीज लाइक इंडिया, कंट्रीज लाइक ब्राजील, लाइक मेक्सिको, वहां पे है नहीं charging infrastructure या repair infrastructure या service infrastructure. It will take quite some time for us to get there. और जैसे ये हो रहा है, but we can't just sit back and say कि इसको होने में टाइम लगेगा, हम कुछ नहीं करेंगे। As PCL, what are we doing? We are saying that हमारा कैश काउ बिजनेस जो है, हमारे लिए सबसे ज्यादा सेल और प्रॉफिट जनरेट करने वाला बिजनेस जो है वो कैमशाफ्ट है, और उसमें हम बढ़ाते रहेंगे, करते रहेंगे, बिकॉज ये जो कुछ आज कैश जनरेशन कर रहा है वो हमारे फ्यूचर में डिप्लॉय होगा। अगर हम इस तरीके से सोचे कि ईवी 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 है, ये छोड़ दो, ईवी करे, तो देन वी विल सफर टुडे, which is not a good idea to do, right? Within PCL though, or within our manufacturing businesses, आप Emos छोड़ दो, within Memco, within MFT, within PCL, there are several new initiatives that we have taken, several new products that we have developed, जो engine agnostic है या power train agnostic है। PCL में हमने आज एक ब्रेकिंग सिस्टम क्रैंकशाफ्ट डेवलप किया है, जो एक ग्लोबल कंपनी को हम सप्लाई करेंगे, जो कमर्शियल व्हीकल्स के ब्रेकिंग में यूज होता है। अब ये व्हीकल इलेक्ट्रिक हो, डीजल हो, हाइड्रोजन हो, ये प्रोडक्ट तो लगेगा ही, बिकॉज इट इज अ ब्रेकिंग सिस्टम प्रोडक्ट। आज हमारी जो मेमको कंपनी है, उसमें एक पार्ट ऑफ द बिजनेस जो 5% था, इंस्ट्रूमेंटेशन कंपोनेंट्स, वो आज हमने बढ़ा के 25% बनाया उस कंपनी का, क्योंकि वो है कंप्लीटली एग्नोस्टिक टू ऑटोमोटिव। उसमें माइनिंग में, मेडिकल इक्विपमेंट में, हर चीज में यूज होते हैं ऐसे इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स, वो वहां पे हम उसके मैकेनिकल डिवाइसेस बनाते हैं। सिमिलरली विथ एमएफटी, इफ यू लुक एट दिस, वहां पे हमने ऐसे प्रोडक्ट्स बनाए जो चैसी कंपोनेंट्स है, जो ब्रेक कंपोनेंट्स है, जो इनके यूज हुए, वेदर इट इज इलेक्ट्रिक, हाइड्रोजन और पावर्ड बाय एयर, इट डजेंट मैटर, right? So our whole focus as a manufacturing companies, we will continue to invest in and we will continue to remain focused on what is growing, which is the traditional businesses, but we are not shying away from the fact that things will change over the next 15 years, 20 years, and that is why active efforts are being made to add new products to the business right now, besides the whole EV story. तो एग्जिस्टिंग फैसिलिटीज जो है, एग्जिस्टिंग फाउंड्रीज जो है, एग्जिस्टिंग मशीनिंग लाइंस जो है, उसको हम कैसे बेस्ट यूटिलाइज कर सकते हैं फॉर न्यू प्रोडक्ट्स, ये इस पे काफी फोकस है आज।
And Karan, the other day I was reading, so in 2014, around 50% of the cars sold was diesel. Now it's down to 18%. And for petrol,
Yeah.
2013, I think it was around 44-50%. Now it's down, now it's up, but up to 61%. And even EV, back then in 2013, it was 0%. Now it is 2-3%. So you're trying to say that you do not know for sure, no one knows. Even the biggest car makers, Toyota actually failed in predicting the EV cycle, and that's why the valuation they're getting what they're getting, right? So no one knows what's coming. So you're saying that when the transition happens, we will change in line, and whatever that we're doing, the new products that we're doing, we're making sure it's agnostic. Is that, am I reading?
Exactly. So we are doing one product. One focus is powertrain agnostic products, right, which go onto vehicle or completely non-automotive, right, which is then fully diversified. But within engine space, right, none of us can tell, okay, till the whole diesel gate happened 5-7 years ago, whole world was still working towards diesel. Now, because of a certain thing that happened, there is been a complete shift from diesel towards petrol. That's fine. There are still companies, like you mentioned, Toyota, which is extremely bullish still even today on hybrids. And we tend to ignore that it requires smaller engines and will have a battery pack also in it, which gives you the best of both worlds. We are also talking today, and I'm sure you've read this in the news, that there are attempts to say, can we use hydrogen to power a combustion engine? Right?
Yes.
Now, that's a whole different story that we don't even know about. It's like unpeeled onion type of thing. We don't know how many layers there are to this. We don't know how battery technology will evolve in the next 5 to 7 years. Nobody, except a few large OEMs, hardly any companies have seen the end of life of an electric vehicle. What happens to it after? What happens to residual values? What happens to the battery condition? Things like it's too many unknowns. So with our, so we have three streams to focus on. One is our traditional business, which focuses on IC components, then utilizing our assets better to do agnostic products, and then third is this whole EV drive, which is catching pace in Europe, of course, and we continue to grow that. And then there is that India angle to it also, where we are working on retrofits of small commercial, light commercial vehicles for the B2B market.
And you said, again, Toyota. So you talked about hydrogen technology, right? So they have released a prototype. You would know this better. They released a prototype, which is a hydrogen ICE. His name is Toyota Corolla H2, Corolla Crossover H2. So it's very interesting that what's happening in the automotive space. Now, I want to just switch to European market. You have a significant exposure to the European market. You have a couple of subsidiaries there that are fully functional. Look, in Europe, it's very evident that it's not India. The economy is not like India. It is slowing down. It's an aging population. We are seeing manufacturing indexes. We're seeing retail sales. We're seeing consumption actually reduce. So how are you being impacted with exports? Because look, if unemployment rises, if consumption is low, sentiments are low, I'm not going to buy a car, am I? I'm not going to buy a two-wheeler, whatever it is. I'm not going to do discretionary spending. So are you facing any impact as of now in the export market?
Two different things, right? One is what is the impact on our exports from India, and then how are the subsidiaries doing? So I'll answer them separately. I don't think there is much of an impact on exports because look, the market that we are in, we are talking about passenger cars, and within passenger cars, the camshafts that we do are for small engines, so 1 to 2 liter engine or even 1 to 1.5 liter engines. A vast majority of the camshafts that we do are for your affordable passenger cars. They are not the luxury cars, they're not the high-end cars, they're not the pickup trucks, they're not the big cars, right? So even though I must say that there is headwind in Europe, for sure, there is a slowing down of economy, etc. But we are not seeing a direct impact of that on our export business. So we are exporting camshafts to Fiat. We are exporting camshafts to Ford in Europe. We're exporting camshafts to Mercedes, etc., etc. And we're not seeing much slowdown there. But of course, like you said, India is picking up tremendously. We have, a significant growth in numbers in the Indian market, which kind of, even if there is a small setback in Europe, this more than compensates for that. You know, probably already, right, that India is one of the fastest growing automotive markets. We've actually become one of the, is it third or fourth largest car producer in the world, right? And it's the next few years will actually be transformative for the Indian automotive market, especially for companies like us, which are tier ones to the Indian OEMs as well as exporting. So I think it's a good place to be in. As far as the two subsidiaries, our German subsidiary is definitely facing some headwinds because there is a lot of pressure from the OEMs. There is a slowdown in general, especially in Western Europe, and we do face that impact. That's why we have not been able to register significant growth at MFT. But what we have been able to do with a lot of management focus, with a lot of attention there, with a lot of systems being put into place, we've been able to maintain our bottom line and maintain top line while not making it a loss-making business. We've been trying to protect the company as it stands today and looking at diversifying away quickly, and within the next 2 to 3 years there will be a change in product portfolio that I will only be able to explain once it's done. I can't say today, but there will be a change in product portfolio. And Emos, I think we are actually growing there because the demand is there, and most of the vehicles that we do are for essential services. So we are talking about airport buses, we are talking about refuse collection, we are talking about road sweepers. So these are essential vehicles that are required in all cities across Europe, no matter what is going on as an economy, right? You still need to keep your roads clean. You still need to collect garbage. You still need to have buses. These things continue, and we're at such a small, at the beginning of this journey of electrification, that there's actually potential to grow that business, and we're continuing to grow it. So there I don't see too much of a risk.
Okay, so to summarize, you're saying is three items. Firstly, if you go to the European market, you're supplying the components to the affordable class of vehicles first. Secondly, you're bagging on the domestic market, and we have seen all automobile companies really reporting record revenues. Even Maruti Suzuki the other day in Q4, I think,
Absolutely.
they reported record results. So that's second. Third item, you're saying even if you're exposed to the euro, you are looking at essential services like Emos, especially the drivetrain.
Especially in Emos, yeah.
Yeah, and I want to come to Emos. What is Emos? If I'm, let's say, an 18-year-old, how would you explain this Emos business?
Okay. So what goes into an electric car, right, or an electric truck or a bus, right? If you look at the aggregates or the bill of material, you have a battery pack, which is the source of energy, where you charge a battery pack and you store energy, just as you would store energy. What you do in a combustion engine or a petrol car is you store energy in liquid petrol, which you then combust and create energy out of it. Here, what you're doing is you're storing energy into a battery pack, which is a lithium-ion battery pack, right? Then what you do is you discharge this energy into an electric motor, which is essentially copper wires being wound around a magnet, permanent magnets, and it drives the shaft. That shaft drives your wheels. Now, as simple as this sounds, there are several electronic components around this to control what these components do. So a motor has a controller of its own, which tells it, अब ये करना है, अब ये कम करो, अब ज्यादा पावर दो, ये करो, etc. Regenerative braking करो, etc. There is a BMS on top of the battery, which basically tells it कि कब discharge करना है, कब रहना है, अगर कुछ fault है बैटरी में तो
means battery management system.
Management system, yeah. So that's telling the battery what to do. You have a lot of other electronics like an onboard charger, which allows you to charge the vehicle. You have a DC-DC converter on board, which basically steps up or steps down voltages according to what you need. You have high voltage and low voltage wiring harnesses all across the system. You have a lot of cooling systems, especially in countries like India, where ambient temperatures are 45 degrees, road temperatures are 70, 80 degrees in the summer. You need your battery packs to be cooled, liquid cooled or air cooled. So you have thermal management systems around that. It's a combination of all of these items. What we as Emos do and what we are experts at is working with the best suppliers in the world to bring in all of these aggregates, integrating them onto the vehicle, as in assembling them onto the vehicle. And the most important bit of this is that there is a part on the vehicle called the VCU, the Vehicle Control Unit, which is a software basically. And that software talks to all of these different aggregates within the electric vehicle and controls what output you want out of it. Now, this VCU software is written in-house and fully controlled by us. This is not something that we buy from the market. So we buy batteries or battery cells. We build them into battery packs. We buy the BMS hardware, right? We buy the motor hardware, we buy the controller hardware, but telling it what to do and controlling that ecosystem is what we at Emos do. We are a system integrator, right? And the USP of Emos is we are not bound by any type of vehicle architecture. For example, if you go, let's say you go to a Tata Motors and you say electric Nexon खरीदनी है, right? You have two choices. You can buy the regular Nexon or you can buy the Max or the whatever the longer range version is called. That's it. You can't go to Tata Motors and say नहीं मेरी ये specific गाड़ी है उसको मुझे electric करके चाहिए. You can't do that. At Emos you can. That is our specialty. So we do electric powertrains for vehicles from 4 tons all the way up to 50 tons and everywhere in between. So when a customer who has a very specialized product, a garbage truck, a fire truck, a crane that does mining equipment, a 30 axle truck that does, carries turbines on it, all kinds of special equipment, जहां पे OEM choice नहीं दे रहा आपको कि क्या उनसे खरीदे, है ही नहीं. That's where Emos comes in and says कि ये जो कस्टम सोल्यूशन है, ये जो नीश सोल्यूशन है, ये हम इलेक्ट्रीफाई उसको कर सकते हैं. और ऐसे कंपनीज पूरी दुनिया में बहुत, मतलब हाथ पे गिन सकते हो इतने ही है. Right, so this ability to do custom products, this ability to say I can work with a 16 tonner, a 26 tonner, a 40 tonner, a 5 tonner, and still electrified and give you a powertrain which is fit for function. It is not over or under engineered. जैसे आप सोचो कि मैंने एक पावर ट्रेन बनाया, वही 10 टन पे लगाया और वही 20 टन पे लगाया, then you will have a very over engineered 10 ton and an under performing 20 ton. So that's not what we do. We custom design it for that application. So that's where Emos's proprietary knowledge, I think, lies in.
करण, ये आपने बहुत अच्छे से समझाया. That brings us to the next question. बहुत सारे इन्वेस्टर्स ने बहुत पैसा लूज किया क्योंकि बहुत सारी ऐसी कंपनियों में इन्वेस्ट करके जिनका कोई मोट नहीं था. तो मतलब एनीबडी कम विद अ डीपर पॉकेट और वो प्लांट सेटअप करके दे कैन इजीली किक आउट दैट कंपनी आउट ऑफ द बिजनेस. तो अगर मेरे पास आज 1000-2000 करोड़ रुपए हो तो कैन आई बी अ कॉम्पिटिटर टू प्रिसीजन कैमशाफ्ट इन कैमशाफ्ट? As far as Emos, you have explained it कि भाई Emos के पास Emos का जो proprietary अपना business setup है वो उसको challenge करना शायद उतना easy नहीं होगा. But can I challenge you in camshaft category अगर मेरे पास 2000 करोड़ रुपया हो तो?
I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. Camshaft इतना critical component है. आप थोड़ा सा इसका इकोनॉमिक्स और टेक्निकलिटी भी समझाता हूं मैं. A camshaft is the mechanical heart of the engine. Basically, engine के अंदर घूमता है ये प्रोडक्ट एट जो कुछ आपकी गाड़ी का आरपीएम है, उस आरपीएम में ये घूम रहा है प्रोडक्ट. और जैसे वो ऊपर नीचे हिलते हैं कैमशाफ्ट के कैम्स, वो डिटरमिन करता है कि कितना एयर और फ्यूल इंजन के अंदर आएगा और फिर वो कंबशन होने के बाद कितना एग्जॉस्ट बाहर जाएगा. ये सारा कैमशाफ्ट डिजाइन और कैमशाफ्ट मैन्युफैक्चरिंग पे डिपेंडेंट है. तो आपका गाड़ी का एवरेज, आपका गाड़ी का एग्जॉस्ट कितना, मतलब पोल्यूशन कितना जनरेट कर रहा है, ये पावर कितना दे रहा है, ये सारा कैमशाफ्ट पे डिपेंडेंट है. तो जो 5 C's हम कहते हैं इंजन के या व्हीकल के 5 क्रिटिकल C's होते हैं, सिलेंडर ब्लॉक, सिलेंडर हेड, क्रैंकशाफ्ट, कनेक्टिंग रॉड्स एंड कैमशाफ्ट. तो ये इतने क्रिटिकल कंपोनेंट्स है कि ओईएम्स बहुत सोच के ही इसको आउटसोर्स करेंगे. इनफैक्ट कैमशाफ्ट वाज प्रोबेबली वन ऑफ द लास्ट पार्ट्स दैट वाज आउटसोर्स्ड बाय ओईएम्स टू टियर वंस, बिकॉज उन्होंने सोचा कि impact that it has on the vehicle itself or the engine itself is so large that there is no point in taking risk on such a product, right? अब इसमें जो है एक कैमशाफ्ट डेवलप करने में, एक इंजन का एक कैमशाफ्ट डेवलप करने में, a company like PCL which has 30 years of experience still takes 2 to 2.5 years, and that 2 to 2.5 years is intense amount of effort from both PCL side and from the OEM side to make the castings, to machine them, to put them into engine testing, to put them into vehicle testing. उसको durability test कहते हैं. उस camshaft को इतना अब्यूज करेगा वो इंजन कि गंदा ऑयल डालो, हाई टेम्परेचर, लो टेम्परेचर, हर चीज किया उसको, और देखते हैं कि ये ढंग से चल रहा है या नहीं. 6 महीने बाद जब उसको निकालोगे इंजन से, अगर उसमें कुछ इश्यूज है, यू हैव टू गो बैक टू द ड्रॉइंग बोर्ड. right? Now imagine that at this point of time, we have about 200 camshafts that are in production for variety of customers. अगर आपको ये सारा replicate करना है in man hours, it will take 400 years to do that. For each 2 years for each part, right? It's as simple as that. 2 years for each part multiplied by 200 parts that we do today. So that is the expertise built over the last 20-30 years. तो वो जो क्या कहते हैं बैरियर टू एंट्री, वो जो वॉल है, दैट इज क्वाइट हाई. एंड फॉर अ प्रोडक्ट लाइक दिस विच इज सो क्रिटिकल, बहुत मुश्किल है फॉर एन ओईएम टू से कि 5 रुपया डिस्काउंट देगा तो मैं किसी और के पास जाऊंगा. इट्स नॉट वर्थ दैट एफर्ट. इट्स रियली नॉट वर्थ दैट एफर्ट. एंड नाउ व्हाट हैज हैपेंड इज वी आर इन अ रोलिंग साइकिल नाउ, कि डेवलपमेंट चल रहा है, एक प्रोग्राम मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में गया, एक खत्म हो गया, फिर नया आ गया, फिर वो एक रोलिंग साइकिल में. इफ यू हैड टू स्टार्ट टुडे, you have to put in money and you have to wait patiently for 3.5 years while doing nothing, and you have to invest 30, 40, 50 crore rupees per line per product, and then another similar number for casting, and then just sit for 3-4 years hoping कि ये चलेगा. Now how many would want to get into that? That's the question.
Yeah, then you have to hope that the product actually takes off the market, and that's 3 years later.
Exactly. And then see, the whole point is, when my father started this business 30 years ago, there were about 15 to 20 camshaft, matlab, respectable camshaft manufacturers around the world. 10, 15 to 20 थे. आज दुनिया में 5 ही है, which are big enough to consider, right? There are a few German ones, there are a few Japanese ones, few in the US, and India may be the largest, right? So why are there not hundreds of players here? Because it is not a commodity product. It's a very super specialized product. The ticket price is not high per product, but the kind of expertise that goes into making it is too critical for a customer to think कि इसको छोड़ो, कहीं पैसा save करो.
So Karan, from what I understand,
I think that's the barrier to entry.
Okay. So Karan, from what I understand, एंट्री बैरियर दो तरीके का है. एक तो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग प्रोसेस बहुत ही प्रिसाइज और बहुत ही बहुत ही इंटेलिजेंट है, तो इसलिए वो एक एंट्री बैरियर है. प्लस एक एंट्री बैरियर है आपका रिलेशन विद द ओईएम,
with the customers. Correct, absolutely.
So I mean, मतलब I would like to know from you कि आपके पास ये दोनों कैपेबिलिटी है, ठीक है. वन इज द मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेटअप एंड सेकंड इज द गुड रिलेशन एंड ईयर्स ओल्ड रिलेशन विद द ओईएम. तो इसको हम लोग फ्यूचर में किस तरीके से एनकैश कर सकते हैं? मतलब मे बी देयर इज नथिंग ऑन प्लेट राइट नाउ, ऑन टेबल राइट नाउ, बट इन फ्यूचर हाउ वी कैन मोनेटाइज दिस काइंड ऑफ सेटअप एंड रिलेशनशिप.
Too early to say, लेकिन हमारी कोशिश क्या होती है कि एक व्हीकल में या एक इंजन में हमारा शेयर कितना बढ़ सके इन टर्म्स ऑफ वैल्यू, उतना बेहतर है, राइट? सो जितने ज्यादा हम कंपोनेंट्स एज अ पैकेज ऑफर कर सके कस्टमर को, उतना कस्टमर के लिए भी इजी है. एक पैकेज्ड प्रोडक्ट है फाइनली, और हमारे लिए वैल्यू बढ़ता है पर व्हीकल या पर इंजन, सो दैट वो फोकस चलते रहेगा. आई थिंक व्हाट हैज हैपेंड इंटरेस्टिंगली ओवर द लास्ट फ्यू इयर्स इज ऑल्सो कि जो कस्टमर रिलेशनशिप्स हमारे एक इंडियन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेटअप से इंडियन कस्टमर है, बट दिस इंडियन कस्टमर इज पार्ट ऑफ अ ग्लोबल लार्जर कस्टमर, उसके जर्मन मार्केट में हमें एंट्री मिली है बिकॉज ऑफ द रिलेशनशिप, या वाइस वर्सा. तो ये जो है, इस टाइप के सिनर्जीज भी है आज बिकॉज ऑफ द 3 डिफरेंट मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेटअप्स दैट वी हैव अक्रॉस द ग्रुप.
Right. So, Karan, next question I wanted to ask about why this. We've already spoken about this.
So, Karan, what do you see? Where do you see the Indian automobile industry going ahead? Number one, and number two, what is your opinion? Since आप पूरी दुनिया ट्रैवल कर चुके हैं, ठीक है, and you are in touch with so many OEMs worldwide, and you are in touch with so many peer vendors. Okay, so what is Karan Shah's view on Indian economy and Indian automobile sector?
I think, it's not just my opinion, it's the facts that and the numbers that show. I think we are one of the only fast growing developing countries in the world at this point of time, not just automotive but across the board economy. I think what the government is doing in terms of building up the infrastructure in this country is remarkable, and actually gives a lot of impetus to the automotive industry to grow. I think reducing logistic costs as a percentage of GDP, making travel times faster, all of these things will lead to more and more automobiles being purchased and being put on road. So I think there is a incredible journey that we have ahead of us. I can't put numbers to it, but I think we are manufacturing, what is it, 3 million or 4 million cars per year, and I think there is a tremendous potential to grow that. And there will be the whole tier one space will benefit out of that as well. And I think the other benefit here is that because of the infrastructure that is being developed, because the auto OEMs are also making world class cars now. These are not India standard cars; these are world class, right? And because all manufacturers are now gearing up to that kind of technology and that kind of development, I think India will become the manufacturing center for the world. I think we have that expertise, we have that knowledge, we have the capability to actually do that. So making in India for the world, I think, will become a big part of this story. And what was your second question? So you asked about Indian economy
Yes,
and auto,
I think you
and
have addressed both the questions.
When we
okay,
talk about Indian economy, we cannot ignore ignore what China has done, and it has affected Indian manufacturing for the last 20 years, right? You have worked in China, you have studied in China. You just said that you were in China for a stint, but
we
most
had two joint ventures in China. PCL had two joint ventures in China that we operated. So
yes, you had two joint ventures in China, and you had said something very interesting last time as well, that Chinese companies, they do not have the technology as IC companies do, based out of Germany. So what they do is they get into a joint venture like Beijing Mercedes joint venture in China, and then BMW Brilliance. I think BMW Brilliance, that's a
yeah.
joint venture in China. So all these Chinese companies, what they're doing is they're bringing manufacturing capability, but not technology. They're doing JV with the foreign companies. So how has been your stint, and why is it that you retracted from China? You don't have anything in China anymore. Why is that?
No, look, I think it's a whole different market. Look, they're the world's largest car producer, but they come with their own laws. They come with their own challenges. They come with their own problems. The culture of China is very different from the rest of the world. Regulation is uncertain, unknown, and we had two joint ventures, a foundry and a machine shop there to service a specific client, which was a large American OEM who basically said we are setting up a engine plant in China, and because PCL is a preferred supplier of us of camshafts, you follow with us. And so that engine program lasted about 7 or 8 years, and we were there with the OEM for 7 8 years, and then we pulled out of it because the business was over. And it did not make sense to kind of continue investing there because our focus then had moved already to Nasik, to Europe, to MFT, to Emos, etc. So we said we can't do it all, and I think it was, if you think about it in hindsight, it was the most opportune time to get out in 2019, right? Who knows what would have happened after that in 2020? So I think that was good. But look, like you said, right? But they are undoubtedly market leaders or global leaders in electric vehicle manufacturing. I think they're at 40% electric cars already. I think, if not little bit more or less, because they have been able to master the system architecture of electric vehicles, and they have been able to do it at scale. I think when you do this whole EV ecosystem works when you have scale, just as Tesla has done with its gigafactories and giga plants. Similarly, in China, you will have they are the world's source for cells right now. Even today, I mean, great majority of the world's cells are still coming from China, and when you can make at that scale, you're very, very competitive. So that's technology that has been developed ground up there. It's not something that has been done in partnership with Western OEMs. But those OEMs are probably not accepted in anywhere else except in China, right? So those numbers are there, but it's a closed market. It's for them. So very rarely would you see Chinese cars being driven in India or in Europe or in North America uh, directly. So
ओके सो करण आई विल आस्क यू टू क्वेश्चन, ठीक है, लेकिन आपको इसका जवाब एकदम क्विकली देना है और एक वर्ड या एक सेंटेंस में देना है, क्योंकि अगर आपको
rapid
टाइम
fire.
होगा तो यू कैन यू कैन डिप्लोमेटाइज द आंसर. ओके, सो द फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन, स्टैंड अलोन एंटिटी, which is the biggest risk do you see?
Standalone entity. I, I mean, it's long term. It's the long term risk is electrification, right? That is, it's evident at standalone level.
Okay, long term risk electrification. Second question, Emos, सबसे बड़ा रिस्क आप क्या देखते हो?
I think it is faster adoption of EV technology by larger OEMs. Then there will be much more competition in the future.
Okay, thank you, sir. Rapid fire round is over. Okay, now I mean, I think we are running at a capacity utilization of about 80% in the camshaft category. तो जनरली हमने देखा है 70-75 के बाद कंपनियां कैपेक्स का प्लानिंग शुरू कर देती है, क्योंकि दे डू नॉट वांट टू वेट फॉर 95% टू रीच. तो अभी अपना कोई प्लान है कैपेक्स का यहाँ से?
है, लेकिन अभी आर्टिकुलेटेड इनफ नहीं है कि मैं आपको नंबर्स बता पाऊं. लेकिन जो नए प्रोजेक्ट्स हमने जीते हुए हैं, जो अवॉर्डेड प्रोजेक्ट्स है, दे विल कॉल फॉर कैपेक्स, स्पेशली ऑन द मशीनिंग साइड. एंड बट वी आर प्लानिंग इट इन सच अ वे कि ये सारे इंटरनल जनरेशन से फंड होंगे. दिस इज नॉट गोइंग टू रिक्वायर रेजिंग ऑफ कैपिटल फ्रॉम आउटसाइड.
तो करंट टिपिकली जैसे एक प्रोडक्ट जो आपका डेवलपमेंट स्टेज में है, मतलब ओईएम के साथ आप मिलके क्लोजली काम कर रहे हैं जिस प्रोडक्ट पे, तो कल अगर वो प्रोडक्ट अप्रूव हो जाता है तो कैपेक्स बिठाने में तो टाइम लगेगा. तो वो मतलब
जनरली उतना, उसीलिए उतना टाइम होता है. वो जो मैं 2-2.5 साल की बात कर रहा हूँ, उसीलिए इतना टाइम लगता है कि जनरली पहले 1 साल में आप प्रोटोस बना रहे हो और टेस्टिंग करवा रहे हो, एंड देन वंस इट इज ऑल अप्रूव्ड, वी स्टिल हैव अ ईयर टू सेट अप दैट लाइन, which is the typical lead time of setting it up. So that's kind of how it's structured कि दोनों तरफ से risk mitigation के लिए ये timing होता है. That's why it's so early.
So I will tell you, look, we have Precision Camshafts. We had Precision Camshafts in one of our popular small cases. So even for audience purposes, the reason why we invested in PCL is because they had an ICE vehicle which is producing cash flows, and then they got into Emos, which is slightly risky business, and that actually is a hedge, right? That's an automatic hedge. If you transition from ICE to electric vehicles, you got business there. If ICE continues, you got business on the traditional business. And another thing is, one of the most fascinating things that we found about Emos is that you guys are EBITDA positive. You look at Tesla, you look at any EV company, NIO, XPeng, even out of China, where your manufacturing base cost is relatively low, technology cost is low. They took years to report profitability, and even after years, some of them are still struggling rather to report profitability. So and congrats to you and your business.
Thank you, Sriram.
And Karan, something that we all know is that we've heard the phrases like shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. And so it is rather really heartening for us to see business being taken up by a generation with a lot of education, a lot of experience, rather than the business just going down the family lines, because third generation is said to be so there was this Harvard study, right? And it said that 70% of the businesses in the second generation fails, and 10% of the businesses that actually succeed in second generation, only 10% actually succeeds in third generation. So I believe education, experience, everything adds up to further business progress, and we are really excited to see your journey going forward. And
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Sriram.